If you are unaware or disconnected from your autonomic nervous system, then state becomes story. I often have clients or just people in conversation in general that I'm talking with that ask and wonder and are curious around, why do I need to understand my emotions? Isn't it just, what matters that I do or what happens externally in the world in terms of achieving and in terms of just, meeting my goals and all of these things? Why does it matter to be connected with what I'm feeling? As well as, why do you ask me a question from a client perspective of, what are you feeling in your body right now? And I ask that because of this quote. If you're unaware of your autonomic nervous system or disconnected from your autonomic nervous system, then state becomes story. And so your nervous system and your physiology and everything that's activated through that process begins to color the way you see the world, begins to color the way you relate in your relationships and how safe you feel on a moment-to-moment basis. Some of the ideas that we're going to explore here are within this book here. The Polyvagal theory in therapy, Deb Dana. And one of the primary concepts we're going to look at is the autonomic ladder as an idea of where we are in our nervous system in any given moment. Because as I just mentioned, if we're in a dorsal vagal shutdown, we're in a freeze response, then that's going to color our story. It's going to make us feel disconnected, unsafe, withdrawn, apathetic, frozen inside. And we're not going to reach out for connection. We're going to withdraw, we're going to hide away, we're going to be immobilized. In the same way that if we're in a fight response, we're going to see threat everywhere and we're going to want to fight it. We're going to want to attack it. We're going to want to be front-footed in a warrior energy to move towards that thing. Or a flight response of, where are the exits? I need to get out of here. I'm not safe. This is too much. And then that frantic energy of, oh. So if we're unaware of what's happening in our autonomic nervous system, then state becomes story. Things become threatening, too much, or you're frozen and the world's grey and miserable and depressing. So that state colours and flavours the story of your life. And so that's why it's important to understand. And so we can begin to understand this on another level as well, to map these experiences. But in order to before we map this, we need to understand a concept of neuroception, which is essentially, neuroception might be thought of as somatic signals that influence decision-making and behavioral responses without explicit awareness of the provoking cues. Without explicit awareness of the provoking cues. And so that's why it's important, because this is happening outside of your awareness. Your neuroceptive is, if you imagine your body is sending out signals constantly, interpreting and trying to understand and look out for threats within the environment, then a certain type of room, colour on the wall, a certain type of object in a house, a certain type of pitch and tone of voice, a certain type of look someone gives you, even if you don't consciously go, oh, they gave me that look, or oh, that colour's making me feel uneasy, your body is taking all of this in within the unconscious and is influencing and mobilizing your nervous system immediately in response. And so you're not thinking, oh, this colour on the wall is red, or there's a knife in the kitchen and this thing happened when I was a kid with a knife and I feel really unsafe now. It's automatically a knife is perceived, and all of a sudden the fight, the freeze, the flight response is happening. And immediately you're beginning to feel unsafe. The nervous system's getting immobilized in response. And so the way in which we can work towards freedom within this understanding, gain more idea and perception and awareness of our autonomic nervous system, is through the polyvagal ladder, or the autonomic ladder. And so within this ladder there are 3 levels, and it's the 3 basic levels of the nervous system. You can think of it as a ladder, an elevator. The key thing is that you pass through all 3 levels on the way down and the 3 levels on the way up, we can't necessarily skip levels, we always pass through. And we'll get into why that's important to understand. But in the top level, we have ventral vagal, which is the more modern mammalian nervous system that developed around 200 million years ago. Then we have the sympathetic, the fight-flight response, which developed around 400 million years ago. And around 500 million years ago, we had the dorsal vagal response, which is the freeze and the shutdown, which is around preserving energy, resources, or dissociating, leaving the body, numbing the body so that if there's a saber-toothed tiger on your neck, you're not feeling all of that pain. You've kind of, numbed yourself. You've gone into a different type of consciousness. So we pass through these levels, and the level of threat that we perceive dictates this. So if we think about a 5-year-old that approaches us and they're angry at us and they're kind of attacking us, we might feel safe enough to remain in ventral vagal connection to ourselves. We remain aware of our awareness, aware of our body. We feel safe. We don't feel threatened by the 5-year-old. And so, in fact, we can maybe regulate the 5-year-old, right? But let's say that now is an 18-year-old and they're a bit bigger. But you feel like if this escalates to a fight, I can take them. I can take this 18-year-old. I'm not going to go to prison. They're old enough. They're an adult. I'm not going to go to prison. I can fight them. I can take them on. And so maybe you fight them and the fight response is activated. But if that 18-year-old is now some 30-year-old and, they're an MMA fighter and they're dangerous or something like that, or maybe they got a knife or something, you're going to move towards a flight response because the levels of stress are increasing more and more and more. And so to preserve your body, to not get stabbed, to be safe, to not get harmed, if it's just a fight, you might think, even if I win this fight, I might lose teeth, I might get a black eye, I might get some broken bones. So I need to mobilize away from this threat because I'm either going to take too much damage or I'm going to get seriously, seriously hurt or even killed. But let's say now that person pulls out a gun and you're like, well, okay, now I'm totally screwed. Or you're in a walk and the brown bear all of a sudden appears behind you. Part of your body may begin to mobilize immediately into shutdown, into freeze response, because your nervous system's completely overloaded to the extent that you don't feel like flighting is safe. You don't feel like you can fight this. If you try and fight someone with a gun, they're going to shoot you. If you try and run away from them and they're trying to rob you, they might shoot you. And so your body system begins to immediately mobilize into a shutdown response. And so that happens by reversing the evolutionary chain by moving down. And actually, I might have a diagram here that, yes, I do. I have the evolutionary timeline, and I hope you can see that. I think I was peeping around the corner there. The evolutionary timeline, so you move down into more and more archaic levels of the evolutionary timeline as stress levels increase. And then in order to move back out of that, back up the evolutionary chain, then you need to begin to move out of the immobilized response, dorsal vagal, and you can do that by subtle movements. The video isn't too much around this, so I won't go into it too much, but moving subtle movements, subtle cues of safety, begin to mobilize. But this is the important part. You can't skip straight back into ventral vagal connection. You have to go through the mobilization process of the sympathetic first. And so at first you might be like, okay, right, I'm moving again. And then you notice it's like, like you might start to yawn. And then eventually, I need to shake. I need to mobilize. I need to get rid of all of this excess energy, because all of that adrenaline, all of the energy within the sympathetic is still coursing round and it still needs working through, and it might get trapped in the fascia, different areas of your body. And so you need to work through, you need to discharge the excess energy. And as you discharge it, then you can begin again to move into ventral vagal. And back into co-regulation, back into connection, back into being in touch with yourself and understanding where you're at and what you need without your nervous system being too overwhelmed. And so this autonomic ladder and the idea of neuroception, understanding how your body's pinging, begins to give you a map, a diagnosis, a tool to understand where am I in any given moment. And so you can ask yourself, what is it like when I feel like I'm in these states? And what is it that puts me into these states? What is it that puts me into freeze? What is it that puts me into flight, into fight? What is it that helps me remain in ventral vagal connection? And then you begin to build a map and understanding of yourself to understand on a day-to-day level, where am I? What do I need? And so the state doesn't become the story anymore. You begin to consciously be able to be in tune and in touch with your autonomic nervous system and ask the question, where am I? What do I need right now? To either remain in connection, to either just be as I am, or to move from one state of consciousness, one state of being, one state of defensive system to another. And so as you begin to understand this polyvagal theory, as you begin to understand the autonomic ladder, neuroception, and these different factors at play, you begin to gain this awareness and capacity to direct your consciousness awareness, come into contact, into attunement with your body and understand what you need in any given moment. Hope this video was somewhat helpful to help you understand these concepts, as well as to understand the necessity for a relationship with yourself in this different way, so that you can live a life of more freedom, more happiness, more ventral vagal connection. I'll see you soon.